I'm Maggie McGrath, editor of ForbesWomen. In November, 10 states voted on abortion access in the November elections. 7 of those states passed the ballot measures that would expand reproductive health access. But of course, that was just the start of implementing the legislation. And in some states, things remain in limbo. Joining us now to discuss the state of reproductive rights in America as we head into 2025 is Lauren Peterson. She is the co-founder of Abortion in America, a storytelling initiative around reproductive health access, and she's also an advisor to Charlie, a chatbot that helps people access the medical care they need. Lauren, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Maggie.
So abortion, reproductive rights in America, really, really broad topic, but I want to start by asking you, at this point in December, what are you most focused on? Who are you hearing from at Abortion in America at this point in time?
At Abortion in America, we are focused on really the same thing we've been focused on since we launched in October, which is lifting up personal stories around the impact of abortion bans. We believe that these stories are powerful. They have the potential to change hearts and minds, shape legislation, but they aren't reaching enough people. So we are focused on trying to get these stories in front of as many people as possible. In terms of what we're hearing, we have been in touch with hundreds of not only women who are denied care, their family members, people who had to travel out of state to receive care that should have been available in their communities, but also doctors, medical students, faith leaders, a really, really broad swath of folks who have been so eager to share their stories and their perspective on these issues. And the day after the election, one of my co-founders, Cecile Richards, and I started calling around to some of the people who had been most active in sharing their stories around the election through ballot initiatives, the presidential campaign, and other efforts. And we were really worried that what we would hear was that people were worried that their stories hadn't made a difference, or they felt like they had taken on this great personal risk. And in some cases, ultimately, we lost those fights. And we thought we would have to kind of pick people up off the floor. But what we heard was, I want to keep telling my story. I'm more passionate than ever. I want to do even more. So, in some ways, it's been infuriating. And in other ways, it's been really inspiring and encouraging and galvanizing. I think people are as committed to this work and as engaged as they were the day before the election.
Obviously, we have a patchwork of different state laws, and you are not a legal expert, but I'm wondering, are you hearing from women in certain states more than others at this point in time? I'm thinking of Missouri, for instance, which is one of those states that had an abortion ballot measure in November. It passed, but there's been a holdup as there's been some other legal challenges that really, I think, put the entire measure into question.
What we're seeing in Missouri, I think, really shows that you can never take either a victory or a loss on the issue of abortion access for granted. These are fights that we have to continue to fight all the way through, not only passing these ballot measures, but as the laws are implemented to make sure, there are ways to implement them so that they more strongly protect all forms of abortion access. There are ways for these ballot initiatives to be weakened in the process of implementation. And what that really underscores for us at Abortion in America is that right now, as lawmakers are making important decisions about how to implement these laws in places where we had wins, and in states with bans where we're looking at what is the legislative strategy to push back against these bans, the voices of people personally impacted by abortion bans need to be front and center in these conversations. They cannot go away because campaigns and ballot initiative public fights were won or lost on election day. We have to keep this work up, and we have to make sure that these stories are still part of the public dialogue and the public consciousness. In terms of states where we're hearing from people, it has been really nationwide. We hear from people in states where there are abortion bans, of course, and particularly in the states where we've already begun storytelling work like Louisiana and Florida. But we also hear from people in states where abortion is legal and accessible who say, it's not right that I can access this care in my community, but other people can't. I want to share my story. I want to talk about that. Or even people who say, it was just a little bit harder than it should have been for me to figure out how to get support to cover my abortion or to know what kind of procedure I wanted. And we're interested in lifting up all of those stories as well.